My parents actually took me to court over buying a house, no joke, after 13 years of working my ass off and saving every penny I had managed to finally buy my first place. And what was my reward? A summons from my own parents claiming I owed them $360,000. I'm Jason, 34 years old, and it still blows my mind that my own folks went that far. Before I get into how I secretly recorded a conversation in my living room that completely blew their scheme apart in front of a judge, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. It's always crazy to see how far these stories can reach. So, imagine this, for 13 straight years, since I turned 21, every decision I made was all about one thing, saving up money. I wasn't saving for some fancy car or exotic trips, I was putting every spare dollar into buying a home, a place that was truly mine. I worked every job I could find, delivering pizzas, washing dishes overnight, stocking shelves, you name it, I probably did it. I even paid my way through community college, then a coding boot camp, and finally landed a decent cybersecurity job where I've been working for the last 8 years. During all that time, I lived with roommates, drove a beat-up Honda that had more miles on it than a space shuttle, and packed my own lunch every single day. Every dollar I saved went straight into one account, the house fund. And 2 months ago, all that hard work paid off, I closed on my very first home. It's a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, not anything fancy, but it had a small yard and a garage I dreamed of turning into a workshop. When the realtor handed me the keys, my hand was trembling. I remember walking through the empty rooms, taking in the smell of fresh paint, it felt like victory, it felt like independence. That moment? The proudest of my life. I did it all on my own. That feeling lasted exactly 48 hours. Then, out of nowhere, a certified letter showed up. At first, I almost just tossed it on the counter with the junk mail, but the official look of the envelope made me pause. I tore it open and looked inside, my brow furrowed as confusion set in. Inside were thick legal papers filled with legal jargon. My eyes scanned the pages until they landed on the plaintiffs' names, my mother and father, and the defendant's name, me, Jason Holloway. My breath caught in my throat. It had to be some kind of mistake or cruel joke, right? But as I kept reading, the words blurred together into what felt like a nightmare. They were suing me. For what? For my house, my house. And then I saw the number, $360,000, that's what they claimed I owed them for raising me, apparently. Suddenly, those keys in my pocket felt heavy, as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. I sank to the floor of my brand new empty living room, the legal papers scattering around me. The smell of paint no longer felt like victory, it felt like a trap closing in. I looked back at that outrageous number, the figure wasn't just a number, it was a price tag slapped on all the effort I'd put into my life, a bill for their affection. Sitting there in silence, only one cold question echoed through the house, why? To understand why this happened, you need to know about my family, and to get that, you have to know about my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan is what you'd call the golden boy. He's 2 years younger than me, but in our family, he was always light years ahead, like he was the sun and I was just some ghost orbiting around him, sometimes useful just to block a draft. Everything came easy to Ryan, most of it because it was handed to him on a silver platter. I remember my 16th birthday like it was yesterday. My parents' gift wasn't some cool toy or something special but a lecture about getting a job to pay for my own car insurance. That same weekend, I started delivering pizzas to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Ryan's 16th birthday present was a brand new Toyota parked right in the driveway with a giant red bow on it. My parents' faces were glowing with pride, something I never saw for myself. A young man needs a reliable car, my dad announced loudly to everyone gathered around. I stood in the back, feeling invisible, pizza grease still clinging to my clothes. A few years later, I was starting at Northwood Community College, paying for every credit myself by working 30 hours a week as a dishwasher at a diner. My schedule was brutal, classes from 8 in the morning until noon, then work from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. But I kept going because I had a goal. I kept doing my homework until I finally passed out, but I vividly remember one night sitting in the glow of the fluorescent lights at the 24-hour library, my eyes burning from trying to cram for a calculus exam. During a quick break, I pulled out my phone and saw Ryan's latest social media post. There he was, smiling and raising a glass of wine in front of the Colosseum in Rome. The caption read, "Finding myself in Europe. Thanks Mom and Dad for the amazing study abroad opportunity #blessed." My parents had paid for his entire 4-year private university education, including that semester in Europe, and even a master's degree in art history, a degree he never even used. When I tentatively asked if they could help me out with even a small loan for a coding boot camp that might lead to a real career, my mom sighed heavily and said, "Oh Jason," with a tone full of pity, "we just don't have that kind of money to toss around. You know how expensive Ryan's education was, you're so good at being independent, and we're proud of you for that." It was like they praised my independence but made sure I had no other options. After the lawsuit papers arrived, I felt like I was drowning, hadn't slept or unpacked in 2 days, just wandered through my empty house, barely alive. There was no one I wanted to talk to more than Marcus. He was the only person who'd ever really seen me for who I was. Marcus and I worked together at a cybersecurity firm. He was about 10 years older, sharp as hell, no nonsense, and had been a corporate lawyer in a past life before burning out and switching to tech. He found the predictable logic of code way more comforting than dealing with fickle human beings. Most days, we'd grab lunch together at some cheap sub shop near the office, complaining about server patches and bad coffee. One Thursday morning, I called him up with a hoarse voice. "Hey man, got a minute? You sound terrible." "Jason, what's going on?" he asked. "I need some legal advice, old lawyer kind of advice," I said. We met up at that same cheap sub shop. I slid the legal papers across the sticky table, and Marcus put on his reading glasses. His face went from casual curiosity to disbelief, then slowly to quiet anger on my behalf. He read every word carefully, his sandwich forgotten. Finally, he pushed the papers back toward me and said, "Let me get this straight, they're claiming you owe them money for child-rearing costs and want the court to force you to sign over your house to your brother while continuing to pay the mortgage for 2 more years." I just nodded because my throat was too tight to speak. "This is predatory, it's legally groundless," he said firmly. "A judge would laugh this out of court." Then he leaned in slightly. "But Jason, just because it's groundless doesn't mean it's harmless. This is going to get expensive, and it's going to get ugly. This is a declaration of war." I whispered back, "What do they really want?" "The house," I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. 2 days after I closed on it, my dad called. He didn't congratulate me or ask for a tour, he just demanded it. I couldn't forget that moment. I was in the kitchen, thinking about where to put the fridge when my phone rang. It was my dad. "Jason," he said, his voice oddly formal, "no hello or how are you, just a straight-up demand, I need you to do the right thing." I froze as he continued, "Your brother needs that house." "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Ryan is struggling, son. He's got all that student debt, he can't afford a decent place. He needs stability, a solid foundation," he said. The irony hit me like a punch. I'd spent 13 years building my own foundation. "Dad, this is my foundation now, don't be selfish," I shot back. He snapped that it was easy for me because I was good with money and could buy another house easily. "This is for your brother, for the family," he insisted. "My name's on the deed, I'd saved the down payment, I paid the mortgage. It was my house." I'd never spoken to him like that before. My voice stayed steady, but my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. There was silence on the line for a moment before his voice dropped and turned venomous. "You'll regret this, Jason. Family is supposed to come first." He hung up. 2 days later, the lawsuit was waiting for me on my doorstep. Marcus listened carefully as I told him everything. His face looked grim as he said, so they're trying to publicly shame you into giving up the only thing you've ever owned for yourself so they can hand it over to their son. They've been funding his whole life almost. I pushed some stray lettuce around my plate and said, okay. Marcus shifted into problem-solving mode. First thing, you need a lawyer, a really good one, someone fierce. Marcus, I said, they cost money, big money. I know, he replied, but you can't fight this alone. And then I blurted out something crazy without thinking. What if I did? The idea just slipped out before I knew it. What if I represented myself? Who knows this story better than me? Who has all the proof, the bank statements, pay stubs, emails asking for help where they just said no? It's all here. I reached up and tapped my temple, then pointed to the worn-out briefcase I used for work. Marcus looked at me intently for a long moment, and I was half expecting him to tell me I was crazy or an idiot. Instead, he gave me a slow, thoughtful nod and said, "You're a cybersecurity analyst, Jason. You find vulnerabilities, follow data trails, and document everything. Maybe, just maybe, you can pull this off." He paused before adding, "But you've got to be 10 times smarter and 100 times more prepared than they are." Then he looked me in the eyes and said, "If you do this, I'll help. I'll be your unofficial, off-the-books paralegal. We'll nail them." For the first time in days, a tiny sliver of hope broke through the fog. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I had an ally. The idea was so new and so strange that it almost brought tears to my eyes right there in the sandwich shop. I straightened up, took a deep breath, and looked at Marcus. "Okay," I told him firmly, "let's do it." The walk back to the office felt different. The heavy burden on my shoulders was still there, but it wasn't crushing me as much anymore. It felt manageable, like I could handle it. But deep down, I knew this was just the start. Marcus was right, my parents had declared war, and I had no clue just how dirty they were willing to get in this fight. The days that followed blurred together in a whirlwind of paperwork and sleepless nights. Then, the official complaint arrived by courier, a thick stack of pages full of accusations that felt like they were describing someone else entirely. It was all there in black and white, the $360,000 claim calculated with a chilling absurdity. They had itemized every bit of my past, my childhood braces costing $5,000, summer camp in 2002 for $800, my share of each mortgage payment, every electricity bill, every grocery run for the past 18 years, it was like they'd turned my entire existence into an invoice. Sitting at my new, empty dining table, I spread out the documents. It was cold, clinical, brutal even. A wave of nausea washed over me. How could they do this? How could they turn our shared history into ammunition? My first instinct was to pick up the phone and call my mother, scream at her, cry, ask how the woman who had taught me how to ride a bike could now be trying to destroy my life. But I didn't do that. Instead, I called the one person in my family who'd always been a safe harbor, my grandfather. My grandfather, Dad's dad, was a retired carpenter, rough around the edges with strong, calloused hands. He always smelled of sawdust and quiet strength. When he picked up after the second ring, I said, "Gramps," my voice tight with emotion. "Jason," he said softly, "you sound tired." I took a shaky breath and told him everything, read him the numbers, laid out the accusations. I waited for him to react with shock or maybe tell me I was misunderstanding something. But there was silence for a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice heavy with weariness that went beyond just age. "I'm so sorry, Jason," he said quietly. "Your father isn't thinking straight, and your mother is just fueling the fire." I couldn't believe it. "Gramps, how can they be so cruel?" I asked. Then there was another pause before he added, "It's not just them," and that made my blood run cold. "Your grandmother and I got a call yesterday from your Aunt Janice." Aunt Janice, that's my dad's younger sister, had always been complicated. She acted overly sweet to my face but would pinch my cheek too hard or watch me with a strange cold look when she thought I wasn't paying attention. "What about her?" I asked sharply. My grandfather's voice dripped with disgust as he explained, "She's the one who planted this whole idea in their heads, she found the lawyer and is footing the bill." The world tilted on its axis. Why would she do that? Jealousy, Jason, a poison that runs deep. She's always felt your father got a better deal in life. She sees your success and independence and resents it. She looks at you and him and whispers lies into your parents' ears, telling them they're owed something or that they're victims. It was betrayal on a whole new level. This wasn't just about my parents obsessing over Ryan anymore, it felt like a full-blown conspiracy. As I tried to process that harsh new reality, things got even worse. Ryan, my golden boy brother, suddenly launched his own attack on social media. It started with a photo of him standing proudly outside my house, grinning smugly with the caption, "Checking out the new family digs. Big things coming. Hashtag family first, hashtag blessed." Then came the inspirational posts, pictures of him looking wistfully into the distance with captions like, "Sometimes the hardest working people have to rely on their family for stability." He never mentioned me by name, but he didn't need to. The comments section was flooded with friends expressing confusion and relatives gushing over him, "So proud of you, you deserve everything." A wave of intense public shame washed over me as he flaunted his sense of entitlement for everyone to see, painting me as the villain in a story I never chose to be part of. Soon after, the phone started ringing non-stop, calls from uncles, cousins, family friends, all of them calling to give me a lecture. They kept telling me that my parents are good people and that I should remember family is all I have left. "Ryan needs my help," they said. They had all heard my parents' carefully crafted, one-sided version of events, portraying me as the selfish son who hoards his success while my poor, deserving brother struggles. I spent an entire evening blocking numbers, angrily stabbing at the screen with my thumb, feeling completely alone, like an island surrounded by hostility. Just as I was about to turn my phone off for the night, it rang again, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said, my voice flat and exhausted. "Jason, it's Grandma." My heart skipped a beat. Throughout all this chaos, my grandparents had stayed silent, and I'd assumed the worst. "Grandma, your grandfather and I," she began, her voice warm and steady, "we're on your side, honey. We know how hard you've worked and what's right and wrong. This is wrong." I could hear my grandfather in the background telling him that we're proud of him, his voice rough but unmistakably his own. I leaned my head against the cool surface of the kitchen wall and closed my eyes. Tears I hadn't even realized I was holding back started streaming down my face. It wasn't just about their support anymore, it was a form of validation, a steadying anchor amid the chaos. Then, suddenly, my grandfather got on the line. "Listen to me, Jason," he said firmly. "I've seen this kind of favoritism poison a family before, I've witnessed what it can do. I didn't speak up back then, but I won't make that same mistake now. You fight this, you hear me? You fight." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd seen this pattern before, there was a history here, a deeper, darker current I'd never fully understood. It wasn't just about me and Ryan anymore, it was about something much older, something that needed to be broken free from. After hanging up, I moved into my home office and looked at all the evidence I'd been gathering, the bank statements showing my savings, the pay stubs from my teenage jobs, the emails where my parents explicitly said they couldn't help with my education. It was all there, an undeniable trail of proof laying out my entire life. I considered hiring a lawyer, handing my story over to someone I didn't know and letting them fight for me, but my grandfather's words kept echoing in my mind, "You fight this." This wasn't just some legal battle anymore, it was about my life, my story, and I was the only one who could tell it. So I picked up the phone and called Marcus. "I'm not hiring a lawyer," I told him calmly and confidently. He hesitated slightly. "Jason," he started, sounding cautious. "I'm doing this myself," I interrupted. "Marcus, I have to do it myself. They've turned my life into a story, and I need to be the one to write the ending." There was a long pause on the other end, almost like I could hear him weighing the risks and the boldness of what I was saying. Finally, he responded with a hint of respect in his voice, "All right, Patton. Let's go win this war." The weeks leading up to the court date were the most intense period of my life. My house became a war room. Marcus came over most evenings after work, and we'd order cheap pizza, ironic as hell, and spread out all my evidence on the dining table. My collection wasn't just random papers anymore, it had become a carefully organized story. We grouped everything into binders with color-coded tabs: financial independence, parental support for Ryan, declined requests for aid, the house purchase. Marcus's old lawyer instincts kicked in, and he was ruthless. "This payslip from the pizza place? Good," he'd say, circling the date. "It shows you were working at 17, but what's better is this bank statement from that same month with a deposit for the exact amount, and another line showing you paid your own car insurance." We connected all these dots to make each piece undeniable. He taught me how to think like a lawyer: be concise, stick to facts, let the evidence speak for itself, and don't let emotions get in the way. That last part was tough because every piece of paper triggered a memory, a sting of injustice, but I learned to push those feelings down and channel my anger into cold, calculated preparation. About a week before the initial hearing, I received an email from my parents' lawyer, a formal settlement offer attached. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was shockingly arrogant. The offer said that if I signed over the house voluntarily to Ryan, my parents would drop the lawsuit in exchange for $360,000. They framed it as an act of mercy, a way for me to make things right with the family before things got ugly in court. I forwarded that offer straight to Marcus. His response was instant: "Delete it. Don't even respond." He warned me it was just a scare tactic. They wanted to see if I'd blink first, and that even responding could be twisted against me later. So I ignored it completely. But that offer sparked an idea, a risky, dangerous one. "They're trying to intimidate me," I told Marcus that night on the phone. "They think I'm scared. What if I turn that around and use it to my advantage?" "What are you thinking, Jason?" he asked cautiously. "They want to talk," I said firmly. "Let's talk. I'll call them," I continued, "and tell them I want to discuss the offer. I'll ask for one last meeting, just me and them, at my house, to talk things over before the lawyers get even more involved." "Jason," he cautioned, "that's a minefield, they'll just manipulate you." "I know," I admitted softly. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." Making that call was the scariest thing I'd ever done. My hand trembled as I dialed my mother's number. I had to steady it on the table because it was shaking so badly. When she answered, her voice was cold and distant. "What do you want, Jason?" I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. "I got the offer from your lawyer," I told her evenly. "I think we should talk, just us, here at the house." Before things could go any further, I caught her whispering to my father in the background, and then she came back on the line with a tone of triumph in her voice. "Fine," she said, "we'll be there tomorrow at 7 o'clock. That evening, I set the scene, laid out a plate of cookies on the coffee table as a feeble attempt at normalcy. I made sure my phone was fully charged and installed a simple voice recording app that could run quietly in the background with the screen off. Since I was in a state where it was legal to record conversations with just one party's consent, I was that party. This wasn't some sneaky trap, it was insurance. They arrived right on time and walked into my house without bothering to wipe their feet or even glance at the new floors or freshly painted walls. They looked straight at me, faces a mix of pity and determination, like surgeons about to perform a painful but necessary amputation. My father, Jason, sat down on the edge of my new sofa without being asked. "We're glad you finally came to your senses," he said. "This has been tough on all of us." I stayed calm and replied, "I haven't come to any senses. I just wanted to understand, to hear it directly from you. Why are you doing this?" My mother sighed deeply, sounding like a martyr. "We're doing this for you. Don't you see? We're trying to teach you about family. Ryan is your brother, he needs this. I couldn't believe she said that. You've always been fine on your own, she continued. So because I've managed on my own, I'm the one who has to give everything up. My father suddenly boomed, his face turning red. It's not everything, he shouted. It's a house, you can get another one. This is about what's right. I leaned forward, heart pounding in my ears, keeping my voice low, almost a whisper. The lawsuit, the $35,000, that's all real. Do you honestly think I owe you that? My mother scoffed and waved her hand dismissively, then finally said what I'd been waiting for, the words that would change everything. Oh, for heaven's sake, Jason. Don't be so dramatic. Of course we know a judge won't really give us the house or make you pay that ridiculous amount. Our lawyer told us that. I held my breath, my thumb resting lightly on my phone in my pocket. Then I asked softly, then why? Why do this? She looked me straight in the eyes, her expression cold and hard. Because this is the only way, she said, voice dropping with venomous clarity. It's a ploy, to pressure you into doing the right thing and giving the house to your brother without a messy fight. It's about making you understand your place. My father nodded in agreement. A public embarrassment is a small price to pay for family loyalty. The words hit me hard, but strangely, I felt a calm wash over me. The anger and hurt were still there, but now they were frozen, encased in ice. I had what I needed. Standing up slowly, I said, "Thank you for coming," with no emotion in my voice. I think this conversation is over. They stared at me, puzzled by my sudden rejection, believing they had triumphed, thinking their pressure campaign was finally paying off. As they walked out the door, my mother gently patted my arm and whispered, "You're doing the right thing, honey." I didn't say a word, I simply closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against it. My body finally started to shake as I reached for my phone and glanced at the small digital file. It was only a few kilobytes of data, but it was the most powerful weapon I'd ever held. The day of the hearing arrived on a cold, gray morning, and I made my way into the county courthouse with my worn-out briefcase feeling heavier than ever. It wasn't just full of papers, it carried my entire life from the past 16 years. I spotted them across the lobby, my parents and Ryan, and almost didn't recognize them. They were dressed in somber, expensive-looking clothes, clearly chosen to project an image of respectable, grieving parents caught in a terrible situation. My father wore a stiff blazer, my mother a dark dress with a single string of pearls, and Ryan had on a suit that looked a size too big for him. It was almost like a bad costume. They huddled together with a man in a sleek, tailored suit, their lawyer, glancing at me briefly before quickly looking away. It was like they were putting on a show of sorrow. Marcus had insisted on coming along. He wasn't allowed to sit with me at the defendant's table but gave my shoulder a firm squeeze before taking a seat in the public gallery. "Just stick to the facts, Jason," he whispered. "You've got this." When we were called into the courtroom, I saw it was smaller than I'd imagined, just polished wood and serious efficiency. A woman with a kind face, probably the court clerk, told us the judge would be out shortly. Her name was Judge Dalton. I sat alone at my table and arranged my binders. My hands sweated but my mind was surprisingly clear. The fear was still there, but so was a cold, hard anger deep in my gut, giving me strength. Judge Dalton entered the room. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that said she'd seen it all before and wasn't impressed by much. The hearing began. My parents' lawyer started first, spinning a masterful tale of manipulation. He talked about my parents' unwavering love and sacrifices, showing pictures from my childhood, me on a tricycle, me at a birthday party, trying to paint them as parents who'd given me everything. His voice thick with emotion, he claimed that during their time of need, one son drowning in student debt, the other a successful professional refusing to help, they expected me to acknowledge the debt I owed them, not just financially, but morally too. He presented an invoice, the itemized list of what they claimed were my childhood costs. Judge Dalton studied it carefully, her face unreadable. Then she called Ryan to testify as a character witness. Ryan spoke softly about his struggles as a freelance artist and digital content creator, explaining how the instability was affecting his mental health and how all he wanted was a steady home to work from. His performance was convincing. I could feel the few people watching us in the gallery judging me harshly. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Holloway," Judge Dalton said, her gaze fixed on me. "You are representing yourself today?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "The floor is yours." I stood up and moved to the lectern. Avoiding eye contact with my parents, I looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," I began, "the plaintiff's lawyer has told a very moving story, but unfortunately, it's not true." Over the next 20 minutes, I systematically broke down their narrative point by point. I didn't rely on emotion, I used facts and data. I showed them proof. Exhibit A was my bank statement from June 2008 showing my first paycheck from Pizza Palace. Exhibit B was the bill of sale for a 1996 Honda Civic I bought myself for $800. Exhibit C listed every tuition payment I made to Northwood Community College. As I laid out each piece of evidence, my voice grew more confident. I even included emails where I asked for a small loan for my coding boot camp but was denied because of Ryan's master's degree expenses. I presented documents proving I saved for my home loan, a 20% down payment entirely from my own salary. Judge Dalton listened carefully, occasionally jotting notes. The courtroom was silent except for my voice, which grew more assured with every fact. My parents' lawyer started to look uncomfortable. When I finished presenting evidence, I addressed the judge again. "Your Honor, I have no further evidence at this time, but I'd like to call my mother to testify." A murmur rippled through the room as she looked at her lawyer in panic. He whispered something to her, and reluctantly she moved toward the witness stand. My heart hammered as I approached her. I kept my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "Mom," I said softly, and that word felt like ash in my mouth, "you stated in your complaint that you're suing me to recover the costs of raising me. Is that correct?" She clutched her pearls nervously and nodded yes. "We just want what's fair," she said. "You believe I owe you this house. We believe Ryan deserves it, and you should do what's right for your family." Her words started sounding like a broken record. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. "Mom," I pressed on carefully, "isn't it true that this entire lawsuit, the $360,000 claim and demand for the house, isn't really about getting those things?" Suddenly, her lawyer jumped up with an objection, leading the witness. But Judge Dalton held up her hand to silence him and fixed her sharp gaze on my mother. "Mrs. Holloway," she said quietly but firmly, "I will ask you one more time, and I advise you to remember you're under oath. Did you or did you not tell your son that this lawsuit was just a ploy?" My mother's bravado melted completely, fear overtook her face. Her pearls, her expensive dress, everything about her act of grieving vanished in an instant. She opened her mouth but couldn't speak. She looked at my father for help but he refused to meet her eyes. Finally, she let out a sob and whispered, "Yes." That one word sealed their fate. Judge Dalton leaned back with visible disgust on her face and said, "This is one of the most egregious abuses of the judicial process I've ever seen." Her voice was steel cold. "You have filed a frivolous and malicious lawsuit, you've lied under oath, and you've tried to use this court as a tool for family extortion." She shifted her gaze directly to me and said, "Mr. Holloway, you've shown more integrity and professionalism than the actual lawyer in this room." Then, with a quick motion, she slammed her gavel down, the loud crack echoing like a gunshot through the quiet courtroom. "Case dismissed with prejudice," she declared loudly, adding, "and I'm referring this matter to the State Bar for a review of counsel's conduct. We are finished here." It was over. I had come out on top. I stood there, gripping the lectern tightly to stop my hands from trembling. I glanced at my family, their faces a mess of pure, unfiltered shame. They had bet everything on me backing down, and they'd lost in the most public way imaginable. At that moment, they weren't really my parents or my brother, they were just strangers caught on the other side of a war I never wanted to fight but was forced to win. Leaving the courthouse felt like stepping out of a pressure cooker. Outside, the air was cold and biting, and for the first time in months, I could finally breathe. Marcus was waiting for me on the steps, a huge grin spread across his face. He didn't bother saying anything, just pulled me into a rough, backslapping hug. "You did it, you absolute madman," he said with a laugh. "You actually pulled it off." The victory tasted sweet, but I knew deep down it wasn't the end of things. People like my parents, my aunt, and my brother don't just accept defeat, they double down. I was right. The fallout hit quickly and was pretty pathetic. 2 days after the hearing, Aunt Janice started her campaign of chaos. It was a string of crazy, rambling voicemails, one of which was slurred and clearly fueled by cheap wine, saying, "You think you're so smart, don't you?" She went on, "You humiliated your own mother, you tore this family apart. You're going to pay for this, Jason. You'll end up all alone, you'll see." Ryan took a more public route. He set up a GoFundMe titled, "Help Me Rebuild After Family Betrayal."